No, it is not. Welcome to the August 5th Planning Board meeting. We will start by brief introduction. Can we go around the room and quickly introduce ourselves? Jill, you want to start?
I'm Jill Wiedrick. I'm the village planner.
Joseph Burkhart, Planning Board member.
Andy Martin, Planning Board member.
Yana Gronsky, Planning Board Chair.
Heather Williams, Planning Board member.
Thank you. And we can go ahead and we'll start by approving minutes from our May 6th Planning Board meeting. If all in favor, say aye. Oh, do we need, yes.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed.
All right, so we've got case one. The case type is a site plan review. The address is 94 South Main Street. The applicant is James Kruger. The request is to change use from a place of worship to an assembly space on the second floor, an educational studio space on the first floor. And this is an application that was held from the September 5th, 2023 meeting. So Jim, you can come up.
Nope.
Test 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah. I wanted to update you on what's happened since the September meeting. You requested some information at the last meeting in regards to a lot of details focused around the tenants that we were planning on having at the Fairport Performing Arts Center. Since then, those plans unfortunately, fell apart. Commitments weren't finalized, and people decided to do other things. So I spent over the winter very worried about what my plans and hopes for the Fairport Performing Arts Center would be. Fortunately, I was able to meet Eric at OFC Creations, and they looked at the space and thought that it would be a great location to serve Fairport and to have a great theater in our village. So fortunately, I was able to work with them, and we've been planning over the summer. And a lot of the information you requested is pretty much in line. It's just a different person. I'm just looking for a good tenant. I'm not a theater guy. I'm a builder and designer, and I have vision and really look at a lot of really cool properties. It's probably a little bit more of a bad habit of mine if you ask my wife, but I really think this space can be really serve the public and be an amazing just feather in the cap of Fairport. So I focused on those questions that you had about the tenant that would be there, and with OFC managing and being the one tenant of the space, not three different tenants that I had before. I think it's going to simplify things. They have a great system that's already proven for over 20 years of business. They put on shows. They've done a lot of amazing productions, and I think Fairport will be beneficial to have OFC taking over the Fairport Performing Arts Center to make it into a great place for family and fun. So we can go to the next slide. Some of the questions you guys had were what type of events? Most events are going to be focused around kiddos. They focus a lot on if your child or grandchild is interested in the performing arts and want to do something more than just a school play, they will have a great selection of classes. They also will want to bring in any kind of musicals or any other shows, maybe even more professional shows. They also do professional performances too at their current location. Having some music venues, some dance recitals. I just got a call from Jody B's Dance Studio that's looking for a place to have their recitals, which would be fantastic. Weddings and any party or events would also be a natural fit. I'm sure there's been hundreds, not thousands, of weddings at the former Fairport Baptist Church. And we're also going to be looking for any other large group uses of the space. So approximate seating is about 300 people. And I think it'll be a good venue for that mid-size audience. You know, a big show, probably more downtown, at one of the major theaters, you know, some sort of music group at a bar, get a good group, maybe 100 people at the most. This, I think, would be a nice professional atmosphere for a mid-size production or show. Next slide. Do you want me to stop at each one of these and ask questions, or do you want me to go through the presentation and then ask? I can go either way.
Can I ask a quick question of you?
Yeah.
Is this the same material that was in the packet that the board would have had an opportunity to review before?
Yeah,
the
I
meeting?
just changed the graphic on the next slide. That was going to be a little bit of a, it's hard to read, so let's see. So all the information's the same.
I would suggest, without in any way meaning to interrupt you or prevent you from chatting, maybe to focus on the things that are new in the presentation, because I do think the board has had an opportunity to review them.
Yeah,
the
no new
slides.
content. It's just image. There was a slide that was really hard to see and looked terrible, everybody told me, so I changed that. Daily operations. You know, there's going to be different classes. We're going to be doing pickup and drop off of kids at there for class times. There'll be designated areas for the students to go. Classes will be staggered so that drop-offs are, the parking and the drop-off area is not overwhelmed with, you know, 30 cars all at once at like 7 o'clock. They're planning to stagger those to allow for, I mean, the main thing is making sure that the parents want to be able to go and have a non-stressful, just dropping off their kid to a show. So they'll be working very hard to make sure we stagger pickups and drop-offs. Staff will communicate all that information. We did get a packet of summer camp they do at the Kodak Theater that really breaks down a lot of detail and communication to those parents for dropping off their kiddos. Will be really important to run smoothly. Next slide. On-site parking, we have some handicap accessible spaces. We'll talk more about that in the next slide. And my thought is to be able to have, whenever there's an event, parking is only for people with special needs. So we're going to make sure with signage that it's not, so you're coming into a show and you're going to park there. It's going to be very clear that alternative parking is provided and not to go to the theater to park. Let's say there's an orchestra performing and they have 200 seats sold, that 200 people aren't going to pull in the parking lot and be like, oh, where am I going to park? So it'll be communicated very clear that there's alternative parking. The First Congressional Church and the DeLand House have given me permission to park there. We're hoping to do a lot of collaborative things with the DeLand House. There is a lot of history with the DeLand House and the former Fairport Baptist Church, with the DeLand family being a major part of that church. So we want to continue that tradition. They have 75 spots, and the First Congressional Church has 100 spots. We'll obviously work with them carefully so that we don't plan anything that will overlap. There won't be, for example, a show on Sunday morning. And obviously, we also have public parking throughout Fairport. Communicating, obviously important at ticket sales, websites, and emails. That's huge to be able to communicate to the public on what to do and where to go. Signs will be posted, letting people know that special need parking only in the spots around the theater. and obviously communicating to the Fairport Police when we do have events happening will be important. So just so they're aware. Next slide. Right here is a great map of the site. The thought was to angle the parking to create a traffic flow so that people weren't going both directions. And that'll be communicated to come in off of Church Street and to go out on Main Street. There's parking horizontally to the theater, and then the spots that would be pulled in to drop off kids would be slightly angled. It'll make it easier to back up and pull out. Also will have markings, and so that students will be able to walk carefully around to get into their cars. There's also a bike rack planned in the front. A lot of the drop-offs will come in through the side. People that go park alternatively, there'll be seating in for parents that want to wait for their child to come and finish class, but we're going to recommend that parking only for 5 minutes just to go there and pick up. But anything else, if you want to stay longer, you can park in one of the designated parking areas and come in through the front door. Next slide. Other forms of communicating. The Kodak Theater example that you have in your packet kind of shows a lot of detailed information on where and what to do. Having an example of what they've already done to mitigate any questions or concerns. Like I said, they've been doing it for 20 years. They've been working with parents and teaching and putting on shows, so they're really knowledgeable on what needs to occur to have a smooth performance. Getting parking agreements were important so that I would help alleviate the public parking issues that we have in Fairport. So the First Congressional United Church has been gracious enough to let us use their parking spaces. And the DeLand House also, I got talking with the new owner, and she was more than happy to say that we are welcome to use any parking in their spot if people wanted to park in there. So that was really amazing of her. Next. There's obviously other means of getting to the theater. Bike racks will be set up, bus routes, we're right on the bus route, and potential valet parking that we could set up if we find that, let's take maybe a Fairport Music Festival that, having something where they can be dropped off and schedule something for a valet to maybe pick up at Parrington Park or something like that. There'll be some options that will be creative with just making it smooth so that folks could get to the show. I think one thing that people realize in Fairport is it's a very walkable village, and walk and go to a show and maybe go to a restaurant or a shop to enjoy the village. So, but obviously parking is important, but there's other alternatives that will be creative to use throughout the theaters and the events going on. I was asked to give an example of an existing church. There's actually a lot of revitalization of churches. There's such beautiful architecture structures, and Babeville and Buffalo is a great example of an old church, a big church, probably twice the size of the former Fairport Baptist Church. And they did an amazing job of making that space usable. Couple things. They put a lot of money into the space. It needed a lot of work. It was in really disrepair. It was a public-private venture, and it came out really, really nice. I got a chance to talk with the owner and see the space. The end result is a great space for shows, and their focus more isn't on education and theater, though they do have shows there. It's more on music, but it's something that kind of directly relates. They have a larger occupancy of 550 people. They use the Buffalo City public parking. They don't have much of a parking lot personally themselves, just for the owners and their staff. They do some theater, some concerts, especially weddings and other events. But our difference is we're going to be focusing more at the Fairport Performing Arts Center on theater, though we'll also have some of the other things. And we're hoping to do some collaborative things if, let's say, a great music group that attracts a pretty good crowd, that we would be able to create another stop in maybe their tour. This is just their fall schedule of what they have. They have some great music groups, like I said, very music focused. And they also do things throughout the week as well to utilize the space for the community. And parking is over at 341 Delaware, is where they mainly focus the parking space for Babe View in Buffalo. And that's, if you've been in the Fairport Performing Arts Center, the buttresses and the architecture is very similar to this space, though, again, this is much larger, absolutely beautiful, and something that I'm hoping to be able to also, with lights and sound, and performances that will really give the theater goers a really great experience. All right, so OFC Creations, the tenant for the Fairport Performing Arts Center. They've been doing this since 2005. Eric Von Johnson is the owner. They have a current location at Winton Place, kind of where the old Comics Cafe is where their current main location is. This is going to be their second location. And they offer educational opportunities for theater students from the ages 4 to 18. And they also have summer camps that they do. And again, the focus will be on theater and education, and teaching kids, not just theater, also technical and other things, just to have kids a part of the world of theater. Some of the projected occupancy numbers, daytime. During the school year, they just have their employees that will be scheduling and doing different things, behind the scene things that would a business normally do. But after school is when a lot of the kids will go to their practice. During summer, there'll be camps. They'll be spread out throughout the day, and be able to utilize the space and make it into a great opportunity for everyone. And kind of an example of a weekly schedule, Monday through Friday. 9 to 5 is mainly office, but later in the day, there could be a after school class, there could be young kids. This is all projected information. None of this is written in any kind of stone. It all depends on enrollment and staffing and a lot of things, but this could be an example of what maybe they would see. There could be, larger classes and smaller individual classes. Maybe there's just a voice lesson. And so, again, staggering the classes would be important. Those are just rough time blocks, but they would all be staggered so that one class doesn't get out and another class has to show up at the same time. The weekend schedule, they'd like to do maybe 2 performances on Saturday and 1 performance on Sunday, if their performance is slated for that weekend. There could be practices, private lessons, all depending, again, on what's on the docket and what they're planning. A few other little things. They have, right now, probably approximately 500 students that they see, and having another place to be able to divide up some of those students is going to be one of their focuses. And having classes will be very much like their Brighton Henrietta location. And we're hoping to have a great forward outlook of having just building the program and having it being very useful for parents in the community. Really important, security, having employees at the entrances directing students where to go, or if there's a theater show, notifying the police department of any events, having, I think what's most important is that these shows are going to be family-friendly shows. We're not looking to have like a heavy metal concert at a church. And I've talked a lot to Eric about this. It's very important that, we want to make sure the venue respects and is the tradition of the theater and the former Fairport Baptist Church. One of my main things that I spoke to the congregation about when they closed was that my goal is to make this a place where memories and people have amazing experiences, just like the members did for decades at that church. So most important to me is to make sure that the events are there's not profanity, it's just a atmosphere where you can take your children and they would feel comfortable, and having seating and not like people rushing the stage. If there's like a rock concert, I think it's not that kind of venue. It's a kind of venue that's going to be very safe and family friendly. So, but will be, if let's say we get a big group, I went to the James Taylor concert last month, if I got something crazy like that, we'd obviously, and there was big ticket sales, we'd obviously have security for the event if it's something, but most of the stuff is going to be pretty low key, maybe a dance recital or a show with kids and stuff like that. A little bit of an updated plan for you. Originally, there was multiple businesses in these locations. They're just using the entire first floor, which formerly were classes. We opened up, one was already opened up, and we're opening up another one, so they have some large spaces. But the first floor is mainly for students to come in and work on things and have breakout rooms. Maybe there's going to be some soundproof rooms or dressing, like they have one room that has a bunch of mirrors with lights so the performers can put on their makeup. So we're going to work on finalizing this with the building department next month in order to make this first floor very useful for OFC. Next slide. And with the theater, we're looking at expanding the stage out so that it can have a nice performance. So if there's, a bunch of dancers up there or a show, that there'll be a lot of space. So we're going to be building out the front to bring it more closer to the audience and expanding the width to be able to have maybe the next act behind the curtains ready to come in. So we're also I've been working with the building department, Mark, to get in some additional egress to make it so that performers can come up through the back to then, if they're like next up or their act's going to be next, that they're ready to go out onto stage. So, so that's that. And questions? That was a lot of information.
So do we want to do the public comment
I was going to
first.
say, it might be helpful to, if anybody in the audience wishes to comment in support of the application, and then we'll ask for those in opposition to the application, and then proceed with questions.
That's a good idea.
So that being said, is there anyone that would like to speak in support of the application? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to the application? And let me just clarify, support or opposition, you can also come up if you're neutral and you just have additional questions on the application. So this is your opportunity for, as members of the public, to say, hey, I'm curious about this, curious about that. The applicant will have a chance to respond to not only questions from the board, but also from the public too.
That's great.
Oh, we actually, yeah, we do, only because this is recorded and live broadcast to an audience of at least 2 million. So we want to make sure that everybody is able to hear your questions or comments.
My name's Jeff Seidel. I have the property at 14 West Church Street and at 92 South Main Street. And I'm neutral on the project. I just want more information. My main concern comes from not just being a property owner, but for the tenants, is the traffic and how that is managed and contained. Also the safety. When you have a lot of people and you're at the four corners of a pretty busy intersection occasionally with kids and so forth, how all that's going to get managed. I'm in support of it, but I'm just concerned about some things that I'd like more detail on. That's pretty much it.
Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, so now we'll open it up to the planning board members.
You want me to speak to Jeff's additional
yeah.
questions?
I think so.
Yeah.
you wanna
While you
address-
think of some more. Great question. One of the things I emphasized on staggered drop-offs to make sure that the parking lot's not overwhelmed. I currently have another location where I have the remodeling showroom at 66 North Main Street. And, when there's, for example, Created by Us is having right now a summer camps, and at certain times the parking lot gets pretty busy. Some people have issues with other people parking in their spots. The way I see it is, listen, there's plenty of parking around. There's a lot of people at Jeff Seidel's locations of tenants that park in my spots, vice versa. I think as long as it's communicated to folks that, listen, there's spaces designated for the people that have the condos right next to the theater, that is not for you to park in. Making sure that it's very clear that people aren't just going to park wherever they want and cause issues. We're going to make sure, because we want, as business owners and these beautiful pieces of property, that everybody needs to have a little understanding, but at the same token, things will be put in place and things will be communicated to whether Jeff Seidel's tenants or my tenants that we need to make sure that this parking lot goes smooth for drop-offs. And that will be a priority. And having an open communication with one another on any concerns that come up is going to be my top priority. I know they're doing a construction project on Main Street, and I'm hoping a part of that could be maybe larger areas of traffic walking across. Thanks for pulling up that slide. Right at the corner of Main and Church. I'd want to be able to see, and I looked at some of the plans just recently, just to make sure that the buttons work, to know when people cross, because they will have to cross Main Street at the parking at the Land House and the First Congressional Church. If they park down in town, they would just come down Main Street. I think just communicating to the parents that, especially the kids, I know when they're little, the parents are really good about dropping them off or having a staff member bring the kid in so that they don't just wander around. But it's really that young adult age that we'll have to make sure that we're very clear that you're not just hanging out in the parking lot, skateboarding or doing whatever, or, being very mindful about the traffic. And, but, I just think it's just something that open communication, letting people know, making sure that all theater goers know that parking is not there at that location, it's elsewhere, so that we don't get a flood of traffic at once on the space, because that just would make everybody's life difficult. And it just really comes down to communication. And I've worked with the owner of OFC, Eric, and he is completely in agreement that he just wants to make sure everything runs smooth too. So very professional. And I say there's gonna be no problems, I'd lie to you, but to say that there's gonna be a lot of things that are gonna be put into place to make sure that things go smooth, that's our goal. So, yeah. Other questions?
I'll get started here. To start, and I think I speak on behalf of my colleagues when I say, we all appreciate that this is a historic structure with a ton of history for the village that matters very much to the community. It's sort of an icon of the buildings that are in the community. And I personally, and I think my colleagues, are excited about the idea of it being reused and having an exciting purpose and being given new life. I think the idea of using it as a theater is great. It's an exciting opportunity, like you said, to bring in all sorts of performers, but also to give kids in our community an opportunity to find things that they're excited and passionate about. I'm appreciative of the info you gave about the new tenant that you've secured, and I salute your efforts in being creative and finding that. That's an exciting new tenant with OFC that I think offers a lot of opportunities. And I know you geared many of your responses towards some questions that we had about the usage and the tenant. I think another primary concern we had the last time we got together, and I think unfortunately is still prevalent today, is the concern about the parking situation and about how we're going to manage traffic at that intersection. So just as we are excited about the use and the creativity you've shown for this property and the engagement in finding an exciting tenant, we also have an obligation, I think, as a board to make sure that we're following the code and doing the right thing by the community in terms of safety and parking and thinking about those considerations. So, when I reflect on the previous requests, again, I think you did a nice job in responding to what we had asked about the tenant. There are a number of things that we asked for the last time we got together that feel not fully developed in the response that we've received today. So, for example, some things that we were talking about was a map talking about vehicular and pedestrian traffic. I didn't see a map in the materials. We talked about written parking agreements. I did see that you'd worked really collaboratively. And again, I salute the effort to be a good community member and a good business partner with the fellow members of our community and other businesses, like DeLand House. Great creative idea for parking. Missing from those agreements, I think, while I appreciate the spirit and the collaboration of them, is things like the total number of spaces, where the spaces are, how, depending on the use of those properties, the spaces will be available. In one of the agreements, it seemed like it would sort of be a case-by-case evaluation. What does that mean in terms of what we're actually likely to see for parking availability? Again, I appreciate your commitment to wanting to get the information out and doing right by the folks who are going to come to the Performing Arts Center to know about parking. But I think for the board to see, what does that communication look like? What does it look like in terms of the signage that we would put out in the parking lot or on the street? Are there boards? How are we doing that with just a level of additional detail and specificity? And again, I appreciate certainly the hard work I know you've put into this. But I think we also have an obligation to get a little additional detail that feels more concrete than perhaps some of the information that we have today. So I have some other comments, but I'll let my colleagues take it away with their thoughts. I think what you may hear are a number of thoughts and less so questions, but just things that we would encourage you to be thinking about in addition to the things that we'd raised in our prior discussion.
Thanks so much, Heather. I agree 100% with all that was said, and just wanted to add a couple things that are of concern to me, and I think also to the rest of the board, just in terms of presenting the site plan itself. It is somewhat confusing. Like, there's no dimensions. There's, I'm looking at it and it's not clear what is new and what is existing. Like the striping, is that, you mentioned that's a pedestrian zone, that they will be, is that a sidewalk? Is that just striping? How is that, is there a curb to
Striping.
just striping? It is, but still, like, there's a retaining wall, for example, on the north side of it, and that's designated as pedestrian striping. Is that, next to it? Or I just feel like the site plan itself needs a little more development with dimensions and details, and how are we separating your parking from, for example, the adjacent condominium parking, and what is to prevent someone just pulling in and parking there for 5 minutes to drop off their kid, and then taking off. I feel like I'm personally a little guilty of doing that as well with little kids, right? Could there be a curb? Could there be some kind of striping that designates, this is our property, or, you cannot, besides signage, you cannot park in these spots. And then, yes, like traffic circulation, how do people know? And I think that's very important. That's one of my major concerns, is how is pedestrian and vehicular circulation going to happen? Are we going to, you mentioned it's a one-way from entering on Main and exiting on Church. Would it be possible to just have a right-hand turn on Church from the property, just because the intersection is so close, especially, on nights that have performances, for example, because I feel like otherwise it will be, it will cause a congestion problem. So thinking through things like that and actually putting them on paper, I think would be extremely helpful for us to review. Because I think what you have a great vision, but we just have to understand the vision and have it on paper.
Besides more of the details on that site plan drawing, putting some dimensions on, it's pretty much what's there. It's just the striping's just angled. It's not, sometimes I feel like some of this is getting a little in the minutia of just getting approval so that I can get to the building department, and, and I think a lot of it too is like just trial and error. It's not all of a sudden there's going to be hundreds of people coming to, it's stuff that we're going to work on to make sure that it functions for everyone. Just my concern is that the amount of detail of little things that still aren't exactly 100% positive, that is just delaying and delaying and delaying. I was here in September, and the delays and not being able to get going on this is borderline infuriating. I have a very easygoing disposition, but some of the stuff that I understand where you're coming from, but at the same token, there's, I got to do the entire part with the building department too, and how detailed I have to get with everything, and it's just the costs and the delays. And I think that the spirit of everything's here. I can go back and do more details on more things, but it's just another delay, and it's another opportunity for someone to say, this is a lot of work. Maybe I'm not going to do this. And that's what happened last time. And if this doesn't happen, I don't have a plan C. So keeping that in mind, in my perspective, I understand where you're coming from. So as long as you understand where I'm coming from on some of these little details of signs or, I don't know exactly where, I mean, a lot of the stuff we have to sit down and develop and do, and that'll be sitting down with the tenant to make that happen. So that's I understand where you're coming from, though.
And I appreciate all the hard work, and I think I speak for everybody that we want to see this project succeed. I mean, we love this building. This is a great idea. We want this in our community, but I think we also owe it to our community to review it in detail and to have a plan for traffic and for pedestrians to try to avoid future problems.
Sure.
So that's why I'm asking for all these details. That's part of our review process. I think that's pretty much it from me. Andy?
So, first things first, we're definitely in support of seeing some movement on this site and on this project. It's an important building to the village, as my fellow planning board members have said, and as you'll probably hear from Joe after me. We want to make sure that this is done right. We definitely appreciate your perspective. I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate that you do have some frustration there. To give you a bit of our perspective, we want to make sure that what we're approving is something that is not only able to be successful on the site, but is also able to be safe for everybody involved, not just vehicularly, but also from a pedestrian standpoint. That's one of my big concerns here, but also is going to happen in a way that is going to be able to thrive. And I think that's where a lot of my concerns stem from. I know that, you may see some of the concerns as, just minor changes to a drawing, just minor changes to a figure, minor words to change. I see some of them as a little bit larger than that. I think that, sure, I recognize and appreciate you saying that we're not going to necessarily see sellout level events at this right off the bat, but the intention is for there to be up to 300 people at events at this space. When that happens, they will all be exiting at the same time, and they'll all be leaving to go to a parking lot, which is down the street, which will involve two crossings at an intersection that can be fairly busy. And as a pedestrian in the village, it's an intersection that's not always obvious to drivers that there are going to be a large amount of pedestrians there. Further north into the village, I think it's a lot more obvious. At that intersection, it starts to turn car heavy a little bit quickly. So having a plan for how to get those pedestrians from A at the site to B and C at the parking lots, I think is paramount. And I think that that's something, I don't know if you have done this, but have you been able to coordinate or talk with the village's police department to come up with some sort of a plan to get a large group of people from the site to parking lots? Have you looked into it with OFC to see if it's something that they've handled in the past in terms of pedestrian traffic control, pedestrian crowd movement control, something along those lines? I think that I'd like to see that fleshed out to a large degree. As far as the parking waivers are concerned, or the parking agreements are concerned, I know that Heather touched on those a little bit, but just to give you an idea of my perspective as somebody who lives and deals with parking every day, having an agreement with another private landowner, I think, is awesome. And I'm glad that you were able to get those agreements with both those property owners. I think that's phenomenal. Having a level of clarity for how those agreements are going to function, I think, is equally important, though. How many spaces are going to be at your disposal? What times are those spaces going to be at your disposal? Is it going to be done on a flat count, or will it be a percentage of the parking lot that will be available? I think combined, they're something like 180 or something close to that in terms of spaces. So you would think that that would be able to provide you enough overflow. I agree there. But how is that overflow going to be provided with both property owners? I'd like to see more detail on that. Again, I think that this is a wonderful idea. I really do. And I hope you don't feel like we're raking you over the coals too much here. But I just want to make sure from my perspective as a planning board member that I can confidently say, yes, all of my concerns were addressed to the degree that I think they need to be for this space to be successful. And in the past as a planning board, I think we have operated under a little bit more eagerness to get things across the line, and we've changed that tenor of the planning board. And I think we've done it for the better because we want to make sure that, yes, we want things to happen. We want old locations that are tired and need an update and need to be redeveloped. We want to see them redeveloped, especially important buildings like this church, but we also want to make sure it's done right. And those two things kind of go hand in hand for us. So again, I hope you don't feel too much like we're raking you over the coals here tonight. But I also hope you take our comments to heart too. We'd love to continue to work with you on this to get it to where it needs to be. With that said, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you. So I agree with everything that my fellow board members here have said. I think that what I'd like you to take away tonight is that you came in for a change of use, and you have heard nothing about the use. You've heard nothing about the quantity of parking. You've heard nothing about your hours of operation, all these things that I think 99% of change of use people that come in front of us that we kind of have to really get into, we haven't got into that with you because we're excited about what you're doing, and we want to help you. The parking is the problem. That's what it's down to. And you're not even hearing anything about the number. Because I think everybody is very willing to give you a waiver. You have to show us how you're going to deal with your use. And I intently listened to the presentation, and I've looked through everything, and I have all the same concerns. It needs to be binary. It needs to be black and white. You can't reference designated drop-off areas and not have them shown on a drawing. You can't talk about staff communications and not tell me what the staff communication is going to be. You can't use the word potential, because potential, as far as I'm concerned sitting up here, it's just not going to happen. Potential doesn't work. You talked about how there's plenty of parking around. I totally agree. How is it going to be used, and how are you going to communicate to people coming to the facility? Where are they going to go? What is that communication in black and white? And I get where you're at, but it cannot be trial and error. It's down to public safety on a state road. It just doesn't work. So, I'm looking at your survey that got marked up. I'm not happy with that. I think you need an engineered drawing. I think that's a requirement of our code. I'd like to see that. Based on the scale of what you're doing, I don't think that is an absorbent cost. And I think that's what gets you over the finish line here. You're 99.5% there. Sure, maybe that last 0.5% is 50% of the effort, but you are so close. And I want you to do this more than anybody. Trust me. And I'm ready to give you that waiver. I just need you to check these boxes so I can say okay. I can't just say okay without you checking those boxes, because then I did wrong by the other 5,900 residents of the village. And I think I actually have the longest tenure of anybody sitting up here right now. I get more comments. I can't go out to eat without somebody coming up to me and complaining about parking. Okay? So I'm willing to waive another 150 spots right now, no questions asked, if you can just produce the documents we need. It's done. You have it. You just got to fill out the form, and I'm ready to do that. We need to do that for the building. We need to do that for you. I got to get you to check these boxes for us, and I'll do whatever I can for you. I just can't do it for you, Okay? So with that, I'd like to make a motion to table this pending the documents that we've requested to the
Satisfaction.
satisfaction, thank you, good Lord, losing it, of our village staff, okay, and that would include, obviously, Jill, but emergency services as well, because I want to make sure that we don't have any negative comments from them so we can get this done. And then I want to get you back here, even if we have to have a quick turnaround meeting, so you can still meet all your deadlines and everything else. Okay, so the minute you come in, I don't know how many days it is, but even if we have to have a special meeting, I would love to do that for you to keep you going.
Joe,
for sure.
and yeah, I'll second your motion. And I also wanted to comment that we will work with you to come in whenever you're ready to come in. And I just wanted to respond, if I could, just to your comment about it being infuriating. And I get that in my soul. I know the investment you've personally and professionally put into this. The planning board is bound to follow the code. That's what our obligation is.
Yeah.
And so, right, the code says we shall, like shall means must, look at the adequacy and arrangement of vehicular traffic access, including intersections, channelization, and traffic controls, the adequacy and arrangement of pedestrian traffic access and circulation, including the separation of pedestrian from vehicular traffic, and the location and appearance of off-street parking and loading areas. So we're not beating you up because it's just like a passion project of ours. It's just, we have an obligation to follow the code. That is what we are bound to do as members of the planning board. So like Joe said, if you can check these boxes, like think thoughtfully about the way these couple of things are noted in the code, you know,
Well,
we
I
would be
can't-
happy to come in anytime.
I can't do much with the actual street. I can do whatever I can in my particular property line, but
Sure. And I think what would go a long way to satisfying what the board's looking for, let me know if I'm talking out of turn, anybody, but I'd like to give you some constructive feedback of things to go through. Agreements with the church and the DeLand House that have a little bit more specificity. They signed the document once. I bet you're a friendly guy. They'll be happy to do it again. But let's get the number of parking spaces, the exact location, and some more detail about if and when they make their decisions about if that parking is going to be available for you. You talked about OFC communications that would go out to families. Let's see a sample of what that would look like. We're not going to bind you word for word to that, but let's get an idea of what that looks like. I think you've got a number of parents on this board who've done drop-offs at locations before, and I know you take seriously children's safety, and we do too. Let's see what those maybe communications to parents look like. Let's get an example of what type of sign you might stick up, that just says traffic in this way, traffic in that way. You might just be able to make that in Word, But just those types of things that let us go from it being a great idea to being like, okay, I see how this plan works, I think would help.
I could do a lot of that stuff, but I don't know, Joe, going back to your comment of the detail on whether to get in a brand new redone site plan, is that what the board is requesting of me?
That is what I would be requesting. Like personally, that's what I need to see. You gave me a cropped survey.
Mm-hmm.
There appears to be references to easements. I'm sure you have access easements because you don't have a full driveway in on at least the north side there. So I'm sure there's all kinds of easements. So I'm not sure you have the right to make it a one-way through there.
It's not going to be a one-way, it's going to be
Yeah.
for the drop-off, because I wouldn't want on Jeff Seidel's tenants to feel they have to go one way. But I figured for when parents came in, I felt that going two ways would be more confusing than anybody.
Sure, and with easements too, I'm not sure you're allowed to add parking. I'm not. So, I think somebody's really got to look at that and say, yes, this is legal, this is proper, this is something that is feasible. I think you need a plan that designates all the areas. I think you need a plan that has some dimensions on it. I think you need a plan that shows where signage would be located.
More dimensions than that, more of the spacing of the dimensions, 'cause there's a lot of dimensions on there. But
I
you're
guess,
saying,
yeah, like I'm confused how you have drop off for what could be 35 kids. Like where are potentially 35 cars going other than blocking Main Street? Keep in mind that all your times are during high traffic times. Keep in mind you're next to two residential buildings and, you know, a parking lot that I don't even know if you can get two-way traffic between where the parking stops adjacent to your site and the corner of your building. I mean, these are all things that, you know, like, I'm concerned. I don't want to come solve it for you. I got too much going on, you know. I want it to work. So for, you know, whatever it costs an engineer to figure it out, you just check the box for us, you know, and that's a big box to check. Like, you're there, in my mind.
Can I ask the planning board if you would like to see maybe this site and including the surrounding properties to get a full idea of how that parking lot will function because of the easement and the interaction that we've heard a couple times about the neighboring property? And I know Yana mentioned about striping or perhaps the installation of some curb cut to designate the difference between the parking spaces for the neighboring property and then those for the site. I think you might also want to consider perhaps, you talked a bit about security, how lighting are you going to install additional lighting? Where might cameras be located? And not that every detail on that has to be discussed, but maybe lead a little bit into what that might look like. You know, is there existing lighting that might provide a safe, secure area? So I would look into how those things function as part of the site, but also in relation to the neighboring properties.
Yeah, and if I could just emphasize Joe's point about, you have on your weekly example, super helpful, appreciate that we got that. There are instances where I see 16 kids being dropped off or 50 kids being dropped off, 20 adults, but particularly the kids. I would really like to see where you are suggesting that parents do that. If it's pulling into spots, in some instances, I've seen camps have parents line the cars up and the staff will come out and get the kid right out of the car and the parent keeps going. Just further fleshing out what that very specific drop-off plan looks like. And then to Jill's point, because of the scheduling, a lot of this is going to be at night, the lighting is a great point of something I would like to understand. I really appreciated your focus and your thoughtfulness on security about cameras and things like that. Just maybe show us where you're thinking about putting those.
Yeah, and just one more thing to touch on, the talk of easements. If there are existing easements that, you know, you are using and it seems like you're using to add some new parking, if that parking's going to be developed because or able to be developed because of an existing easement, we need to know what that easement is. We need to have that because obviously, like Joe said, we're happy to give you a waiver, but we need to have every accurate detail of what that waiver is going to be. And that includes any parking that would be developed because of an easement that is in place.
Do you have other questions for us so that we might be able to give you like more of a roadmap so that we can get you in the right spot?
I know Jill's been frantically jotting things down, so she'll help me, I'm sure. With
So what I'll do is I'll follow up with a letter as before that outlines these things. Of course, the hearing is recorded and you can rewatch it as many times as you would like. And Mark and I are always available to meet to discuss.
Sure.
So is that we want to make,
Can I add a couple
ahead.
more things about the security plan? If you could also consider with some more specificity, as we've discussed, as the board's discussed, about at what level it may rise to the need. You know, is there a set number of attendees that would rise to the need of security, and what does that security look like, and how many folks would be on site? So employees. So maybe if you have 300 people, does that mean you would make sure that there's 1 per 100 for security, or what does that look like? And just think about it. When the board talks about requiring this additional information, it's nothing that you're being held to. However, they need to get an idea of how it's going to function. You're going to find at some point when you open this up and you get things running that the plan isn't going to work the way you want, and you're going to want to adjust it. But what the board is looking for is that additional information to figure out what is that baseline, you know, that, okay, this is where he's starting from, and he's going to, as you develop any business, you're going to go, nope, this doesn't work. I thought it was going to work. It's not going to work, and adjust. But they need that baseline so that they can move forward.
and just to add to that, we asked that for to every applicant. I mean, these are the questions that we ask, you know, lighting, circulation. So this is not, you know, something that we are bringing up just because of this project. This is just a general kind of guidelines. We're following a code that, you know, will help us make sure that this will be a safe project and a good project, and we all want to see that, and we are very excited about it. So, yeah, let us know if you have any questions, if you need anything from us. We are willing to meet whenever you're ready. And anybody else? No? All right. Well, with that, Jill is going to follow with a letter.
And if you guys could vote on holding the application.
Okay. So can I have a motion to hold the application?
Yeah, you got it. Motion to hold the application until the items requested are received to the satisfaction of the village staff and emergency services.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Motion to terminate this party. Is that what I need? Do we need to do a motion to finish the? Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.